You know, the television industry is run by and large by young people, especially talk shows and entertainment news. But today, we're going to meet a veteran talk show producer who found that being a little older can be a real advantage. It was his age and his experience that gave him the chance to work with the likes of Carol Burnett, Mel Brooks, Rita Moreno, Patti LaBelle, and many more. Producer Glenn Meehan is with us. He has 1,000 Hollywood stories, and he'll share a few of them today on Older Smarter. Glenn Meehan is here.
Nice to see you.
You know, I met you 25 years ago.
HBO.
It was HBO Entertainment Report in those crummy little offices on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Very famous offices, though.
Yes, the old Warner Brothers Hollywood lot.
That's right.
Well, that's been a long time. You've had an amazing career since those days. Since then, you went on to do Entertainment Tonight, the Leeza show, the Rosie show, and of course, the Talk on CBS.
Yes.
You had a sort of a special niche there. You seemed to be producing the old stars of Hollywood.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, first of all, the reason why I was producing the old stars of Hollywood is because I knew who they were.
Some of the younger ones did not even know.
The younger producers didn't know. And
who didn't they know, for example?
Well, Carol Burnett.
No kidding.
Bob Newhart.
No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, they knew who they were, but I experienced them. And so being a little older, it does have its advantages. And that John Redmond, who was the executive producer and a wonderful person and friend, just brought me on, I think, to do that. Exactly.
Do that
yes.
Yeah. Because you were the one guy who knew who they were.
Yeah.
At least.
And I dealt with a lot of celebrities at Entertainment Tonight and kind of knew how to handle them.
How is it dealing with celebrities, and how do you endear yourself to them, or do you even try?
You try because you want to have some type of connection. Sometimes when you're doing a talk show, the best stuff happens in the pre-interview.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I want to know what a pre-interview is. Explain to me what that is.
So a pre-interview is basically, with the talk especially, we had 5 hosts. Because you didn't have that much time, you need to get the best possible stories out there. So that's really what a pre-interview was.
But how does that come down? Do they schedule a time when the celebrity will call you at home, or how does that work?
Well, we would schedule a time through the publicist, and they would call us at that time, sometimes not.
Somebody yells out, "Glenn Meehan, I got Carol Burnett on line 1," and you just pick up and say hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. But also some of these people I met before because of Entertainment Tonight.
I see.
So,
do you kind of become accustomed to dealing with celebrities in that you are no longer dazzled by them?
No, you're always a little dazzled. You kind of are sitting across from somebody like Don Rickles, who was on the talk, and halfway through just talking to him in his dressing room, you realize, oh my gosh, this is Don Rickles.
Yeah. How is Don Rickles, by the way?
Very quiet until he walks out on the set.
I always imagined him to be kind of a jerk.
No, not at all. A wonderful man. Thanked everybody when he left, including myself. You know, he's a performer, so as soon as he walked out on that set, he was, no more Mr. Nice Guy. He was just, filled with insults, and that's just who he is, and that's what he knows his audience wants.
Did you ever have to convince a celebrity to do something they didn't want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Like give me an example.
Judge Judy. There was a big case. Judge Judy was on the show, wonderful woman, nice as can be, and there was something in the news, because the talk is live, and there was something in the news, a case that they asked me, and it was an embarrassing case, but it was a celebrity. I wish I could remember, and they asked me to ask her if she'd be open to talking about it, and she was not happy, and she wasn't going to have any part of that. Judge Judy does not, there's no wiggle room there. This is who she is.
She's going to tell you exactly what she agrees or not. How are the old stars different from younger stars in terms of their willingness to participate? Do they come with a greater agenda or less so?
I found that the older stars are really just happy to be on stage, to be in the makeup chair again.
Oh, interesting.
They love that. They love coming on. We were over here at CBS Radford. They all seem to have stories about that lot because it's been around for a long time. And, you know, it was something they really enjoyed, where some of the younger stars are like, yeah, my publicist wants me here. And,
so it's a situation where they don't get all this attention on a daily, whereas some of these younger stars might.
Yeah.
I see.
And
So it's kind of nice for them.
And
so they're maybe nicer in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I can, some of the classic stars, the nicest people in the world. I can't say one bad thing about any of them.
So they don't
The younger
mind,
ones, I can say.
The younger ones.
Yes.
I have some pictures. I guess all these are from the talk, actually.
Yeah, they're all from the talk.
Just take me through them one at a time and tell me who we're looking at and what the experience was like.
Well, Bob Newhart was somebody I admired, and he was just such a joy. And I remember the pre-interview with him. When he called, he was huffing and puffing. He said, sorry, I'm a little late. I was putting the trash out.
You don't imagine Bob Newhart putting the trash out.
And that's where I started the pre-interview. I said, excuse me. He said, yeah, that's my big job every week. Tuesdays, putting the trash out. And so he did like 5 minutes on putting the trash out. And
he actually did 5 minutes on the show
yeah.
about putting the trash out.
And he had this ability to make anything funny because of his deadpan. And another gentleman that thanked everybody when he walked off that set.
Really?
Oh, thanked everybody, shook their hands.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Carol Burnett, she it must have been a big deal the day you met Carol Burnett.
Well, that wasn't the first time I met her.
Oh, so you'd met her before?
Yeah, but that was the last time I saw her. And I approached Bob Mackey because my idea, Bob Mackey did all of her costumes. He's did Cher's and he did all of Carol's stuff. And I wanted to have mannequins of all of her
great idea.
Classic, you know.
Sure.
Characters that she did on that, Mrs. Wiggins and Gone with the Wind. And Bob said a lot of the outfits were very frail. He said, but I have a better idea. He said, I can give you the original sketches I did, and you can blow them up. And that's exactly what we did.
Oh, great.
So she did not know about that. And she walked out with, I believe we had her theme as she walked out, and she's teared up a little bit.
No kidding.
Seeing these huge posters.
So you didn't prep her in advance to see the stuff?
No. My
That's
idea
great.
of prepping is sometimes let it be a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
We always would like to have something there that we knew that they wouldn't be upset about.
So you're never worried that they're going to be upset?
No.
Or they might see something that's embarrassing to them?
You just kind of listen to you follow your gut,
Yeah.
you read the room.
Yeah. Debbie Reynolds, when did she die? Just a few years ago.
Yeah, 2 days after her daughter. It was before COVID.
Is she a likable person?
She's lovely. It's sad to look at her. Because she was Hollywood. She was, as you could even see here, you know, she was ready for a close-up. She was one of those, this is an example of a woman coming on a lot and all of a sudden, I'm here. She just beamed because she was on that lot again.
She started so young.
She did not know how to dance when she did Singing in the Rain.
That's what I heard. And she was injured badly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But she kept going.
And hated Gene Kelly.
Yeah. She kept going.
Yeah.
And she loved her daughter.
Did you ever interview her?
Well, I knew Carrie.
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher was one of my favorite guests. And I remember she was there for a Hallmark movie, a holiday Hallmark movie that she was in. And I'm in the dressing room with her and the publicist from Hallmark. And I mentioned the movie because I'm going over the questions with her. And she looks at me and she goes, what movie? She honestly...
Publicists must love her.
Oh, yeah, no, the look on the publicist was like...
Do you suppose it was... she could have been affected by alcohol and drugs at the time?
Well, no, I think she was sober, but I think her brain was just gone. She had the worst ADD.
Oh, did she really?
She was a delight. Oh, what a wonderful... You just wanted to hang out with her.
Yeah.
Because she would just tell you stories that she wouldn't share on camera because, once again, she got that from her mother. Don't talk badly about anybody.
I love Lily Tomlin.
Well,
She looks a little different today than when this picture was taken, I think.
Yeah, she's had more work done.
Some more surgery. Yeah, a little bit more surgery. She's also, from what I understand, she can be a little odd to be around. How was she with you?
Well, comedians were the toughest because
yes, that's what I've heard.
You worked out their routine. It was all about a routine. It was like, here's my joke. Now you write the question that leads to that joke.
Oh, I see.
And so when you dealt with somebody like Lily, and she was on a few times, a wonderful person, but she was tough. And if she didn't like something, she would let you know and almost insult you.
Oh, no.
But I remembered but she was a player. And I remember finding out she was a cheerleader when she was in high school. And that was one of her ways she got into show business. And I said, do you still remember a cheer? And she said, yes. I said, would you do it on the show? She said, absolutely.
Oh, no kidding.
So she got up from the table and did a cheer.
Glenn, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea that you... See, I don't know that I would have thought to put that together, to say to Lily Tomlin, after finding out she was a cheerleader, do you remember your cheer? Will you do it on the show? That's the difference between a really good producer and just somebody off the street. That's terrific.
Well, but we were always looking for something that would get them out of the chair if they could.
I see, yeah.
Or something as simple as just Bob Mackey's sketches for Carol.
You were mentioning Mel Brooks earlier.
Yeah.
And he's also a little prickly, or not so much?
He is.
Yeah.
But in a good way. Once again, a comedian.
And he wants to control everything.
Oh, yeah. He's not only just a personality, an actor, comedian, he's also a director, a writer, a producer. So he wanted to do it all. He wanted, like a lot of them, wanted something fresh. They didn't want to say the same thing that they said on, The Tonight Show.
Yeah. Speaking of The Tonight Show, and all those old talk show interviewers, Johnny Carson, and Merv Griffin, and Mike Douglas, and Dinah Shore, of those people, who are your favorites?
Well, Mike Douglas. Now, why was that? Why Mike Douglas?
Well,
because I look back
really,
at him.
I don't think of Mike Douglas as the top of the heap. So explain this.
Well, as a kid growing up in Boston, Mike Douglas was on WBZ at 4 o'clock every day.
It was always in the afternoon.
And I remember, if I was lucky enough to stay inside, my parents always made me go outside no matter what, even when it was freezing in Boston. But if I was lucky enough, I got to watch the Mike Douglas show. And that was the first show. I used to study the credits. And I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I wanted to be behind the camera. And that's how I learned what everybody did. We didn't have Google back then, but I would go to the library and I would look up what everybody did. And it was interesting because 3 of the people that did that show I ended up working with later in life.
Is that true?
Yeah, Roger Ailes.
Okay, we want to talk about him later. That is, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Who else?
Jack Riley, who was the Entertainment Tonight executive producer who hired me when I was a kid. And Chet Collier, who was the executive in charge of the whole show for Group W, Westinghouse.
What did they tell you about Mike Douglas? What do you remember them explaining about him?
They used to, I worked with Jack and Chet also on a show called America's Talking, which was actually a network. And they used to sit and tell me war stories all the time because they knew that I almost saw every episode. And just about, they had everybody from Nixon to, John and Yoko for a whole week. And they just talked about how he didn't seem to have a lot upstairs. But he was producible and he took good direction. But he had to have everything written out pretty much.
The tone of those early talk shows was very, very different than it is today. And in a way, I wish we could get back to that a bit, because I was watching, for example, the Dick Cavett show recently. They have all those showing on MeTV now. You can watch them all.
The best.
The way they play out, it's just slower. It was a more pleasant way to watch a talk show.
Well, it was a conversation. I mean, you look at Dick Cavett. I mean, one of my favorites. His conversations, like, I'm just with Janis Joplin alone, which I found out they had an affair.
Wait, Dick Cavett had an affair with Janis Joplin?
Yes. Well, they slept together. I can't tell how I know that, but it's a good source. But when you watch it, knowing that, you can see it, because she was very flirtatious. And
they're just different as night and day. He's all buttoned up, and she's obviously not.
Exactly.
But do you think that was the attraction?
Oh,
maybe?
I think that was his attraction everywhere. It was during the 60s and 70s when he was on, and, you know, he was kind of hip, but he was, you know, you could see him, you know, with your grandparents, and you could also see him at, you know, with the kids at some type of party where they're passing around a joint. You know?
That's right. Did you ever see the episode with Katharine Hepburn?
Oh, well, come on. That's a classic.
Oh, my God. If you haven't seen this thing, it's incredible because I guess he'd been trying to get her to do the show. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to do it. You know how this came down. Explain this.
Well, what I heard, because that is a classic, and it's 2 episodes, because what happened was he was trying to get her. And supposedly, the phone rang one day in his desk. It was Miss Hepburn, who I spoke to on the phone too, but that's another story. She said, you know, Mr. Cabot, I'm thinking about doing television and I want to promote, was a charity or some art auction coming up, but I'm concerned about the lighting. Can I stop by your studio? She walks on and she's looking, and at one point she says, I'm going to sit there, which is his chair, because she thought the lighting was better, so he had to flip. And then at one point, when you watch this, and it's classic, it is a classic, she says, I'm ready. I believe that's what she said. And he looks at her and says, when do you want to do this? And she said, now. And that's how it happened.
You know what I was dazzled by mostly was his cool handling of it. He had no notes.
Yeah.
He had no moment to prepare.
Yep.
He didn't even he didn't even have to yell at people and say, hurry up, we've got to shoot this right now. He just started talking and hoped to hell the director was rolling tape, I guess.
Yes, and what was also, if you watch it, you notice as it goes on that there's more laughter in the studio. So supposedly in that building, if it was 30 Rock, and I'm sorry, but everybody was looking.
Oh, there was no audience.
Everybody was looking at the closed circuit TVs in their offices, and they slowly started coming down to sit in the audience
because they hadn't had time to bring an audience in.
This was not supposed to be a show.
That's a great old talk show story.
Yeah, and he just went with it. He didn't panic. He knew enough about her. She scolds him in the beginning a couple of times too, and I forget what happened.
He's cool. Nothing ruffles Dick Cabot.
So I was at Entertainment Tonight, and I was working with Leonard Maltin, who I just adore. He's a wonderful talent. He was the movie reviewer as well as the historian on the show. He was wonderful, and he was going to New York, and he wanted to do some interviews while he was there. I think he was going to a junket, and so he said, will you call Katharine Hepburn's office and see if she's available. I'd like to go and see her.
Oh.
And so I was, okay, of course I'll call. And I called, and a woman answered, and it sounded like her. Oh, and I said, is this Miss Hepburn's house? Who's calling? And I said, it was Entertainment Tonight. And she said, well, this is her sister.
Oh, but you knew it was her.
And then I said, well, please give her a message if she's not available that Leonard Maltin would like to see her. He's coming to New York. And on a dime, she said, well, this is Miss Hepburn, and I'd love to see him.
Oh, wow.
And that was it.
That's crazy.
We had no cameras, but he went to see her.
Oh, that is a great story.
Just to hear that voice.
In recent years, you have done some fantastic documentary work. And I wanted to talk, if we could, about Keep Sweet. Explain what Keep Sweet is and how you got engaged in this whole process.
One day I saw an article in the paper about the Lost Boys, these boys that were getting kicked out of this polygamous sect, this FLDS, in Utah and Arizona, right on the border. The older men didn't want the competition. They wanted the younger wives.
Okay.
And these younger boys were a threat.
So this is really a story about women being abused.
Yes, and these boys being abused because they were kicked out at 13, 14, and 15 with nothing.
No place to go.
And they didn't know about the world. They only knew their life.
Why were you on this project for 15 years? What was it that kept you going back and back and back?
Well, there was a lot going on, and the story was changing every year, so to speak. And I also, one of the boys that I became close to is in prison right now, and that became a bigger story in my life. He killed his girlfriend execution style when he was high on mushrooms and everything.
My God.
And so he's doing time in Utah. So many people now have left the church, but they're still living in town, and these are family members, and they don't talk. They don't talk at all. In fact, they don't like each other. So it's really kind of sad.
The documentary is called Keep Sweet on Discovery
That's
Plus.
right.
Hey, you know what? Earlier you mentioned Roger Ailes. You had the opportunity to work for Roger Ailes, who, as we know, created Fox News.
Yeah.
What was he like to work with, and what kind of a producer was he?
Well, Roger Ailes was probably, and it's, people listen to this comment I'm about ready to say, and they want me to say, he was terrible. He was wonderful. I learned so much from that guy. He was...
What was the thing you learned? What was that one thing?
Talent. How to find talent.
Find talent.
And how to remember. And this is really how he made it very clear when we did something called America's Talking, which was NBC Cable,
I remember.
which is now MSNBC.
Yeah.
And Roger was also somebody that made us really aware of the flyover. Meaning, he used to say there's so much television for New York and LA and Chicago and Boston and places like that. We want to really make sure that there's a voice for these people in the flyover in these other states. And he was very conscious of that. And
did you have a sense of his political inclinations in those days?
Oh, yes, because
Okay.
I did my research, and he was, I knew about, he was in the Nixon White House. He was, and he helped the first George Bush. And so I knew that we had very different views, but this is a good story. Because you can blame Bill Gates for Fox News.
How so?
Because Bill Gates came around with his checkbook and said to NBC, I want my own network.
MSNBC.
That's right.
Okay.
And basically what happened was NBC said, all right, we're going to give you America's Talking.
Let's put this in perspective. It was when MSNBC took over America's Talking
Yes.
that Roger Ailes was out
Yes.
and decided, screw this, I'm going to create my own network.
Well, supposedly Rupert
Murdoch
reached out to him
him.
when that happened, because Roger was very vocal. Roger used to call me every morning about 5:30 and say, what's America talking about today? And I had to know. Now, I was in that office at 3:30 because I never wanted I never wanted to be caught off guard, so I needed to know everything. I loved it when I told him something he didn't know.
I can imagine.
And so
yeah.
I still hear Roger's voice when I wake up now of like, what's America talking about? I need to know the 5 stories. And so
What was it he said again? Say it when he
what's
called,
America talking about today?
What's America talking about today?
And he wouldn't say hello, and he wouldn't even say good morning, and I had to have my list ready. And he would, and it had to be a list of what we're going to talk about on this morning show that started at 7 and went on for 2 hours with Steve Doocy. Steve Doocy was the host.
Steve Doocy
Yeah.
was there.
Now
he's been around that network a long time.
Yeah,
Wow, I did not realize.
Nice man. I used to babysit Peter Doocy.
Did you?
Oh yeah, now he's he's
That's hilarious.
Fox
Now
News.
he's on the front row at the
I
White House
know,
press
I know,
conferences.
yeah.
That is so funny. And you babysat him.
I knew him when he was about 5 years old.
What was he like as a little baby?
He was a great kid.
Was he?
The whole family is really wonderful.
So he was respectful of the babysitter. He never did anything bad.
No, we just had fun, and
That's
he
funny.
just was he was a good kid. But because Steve was one of my talents, so if he and Kathy went out of town for a night or something like that, I would stay at the house. Steve Doocy used to have us all over on Friday and Saturday nights at his house in Wyckoff, New Jersey, and Roger would come, and it was funny to see him in jeans and a button-down shirt that wasn't tucked in. And the other person that was there, this is a very interesting table. when I think about it. Around that table was another woman by the name of E. Jean Carroll. E. Jean Carroll is the one that is that claims that Trump raped her.
Right. There's news. She's in the news this week.
Oh,
yeah.
And she was at that table, Roger Ailes, who had a lot to do with putting Trump in the White House. I mean, when I think about who was there,
right?
That
you were in the room where it happened.
Oh yeah. I mean, and E. Jean is a wonderful. The salt of the earth. I just hate seeing what's happening to her.
So you have no doubts about her veracity or her honesty in the telling of this story. It happened in your view.
Yeah, and it happened when I was working with her.
Wow.
And I will tell you that she did not tell me who it was, but I knew something happened.
You knew something happened?
Yeah, and she is just such a delight, and it's sad, but I'm also proud of her.
Hey, listen, as we get older and look back on our careers, do you ever have that moment where you say to yourself, you know what, I've certainly had some amazing life experiences. I'm really, really happy with this TV life that I've had. Do you ever do that?
Sometimes. I'm still in the business. As hard as it is as an older person to feel like I'm still in it, I don't want to quit. I don't want to give it up.
Well, that's a great question. Do you feel that the business rejects older people?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. You look at Norman Lear, who's 100, who has shows, in development or getting ready to launch. I think you don't realize, Bob, what ageism is until you hit and become older.
You don't. Because it's always down the road.
Yeah.
You feel sorry for people who are struggling.
Yeah.
You can have empathy, but you don't know until you're there.
Yeah. You don't, and you can't prepare for it.
No.
And so when it happens and you're out of work, it's very difficult to get your emails returned, phone calls returned, texts returned sometimes. But you keep going, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try even harder. And Roger used to say there's 7 different ways to do anything. He had a lot of quotes like that. So I remember that in the back of my head.
So if you can't get through this way, try a different way.
Try another door.
Yeah.
There's 7 of them. And so what happens is you constantly do that. I feel today more creative, more wiser than I have ever in my career. I don't care what other people think. I mean, listen, I still read 7 newspapers every morning,
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Glenn Meehan, thank you for doing this. I am so grateful for you.
It's so much fun.
Not only did we learn you're an accomplished television producer, but you were also Peter Ducey's babysitter. Thanks, Glenn, and thank you, folks, for listening. To find all our podcasts, plus news, videos, and helpful links, visit us at OlderSmarter.com.